My name is Alexandra Wilson, and at 34, I was the top sales executive at Cortex Solutions for 5 quarters in a row. I closed deals others couldn't even get meetings for. My success wasn't luck or connections. It was persistence, deep product, knowledge, and genuine client relationships. I thought that made me invaluable. Then, my boss called me into his conference room on a Friday afternoon, 2 weeks before my $180,000 commission was due. I should have seen it coming. Before I dive into this wild journey, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button if you've ever been blindsided at work. And subscribe to catch more stories about standing up for yourself when it matters most. Now, let me take you back to how it all started. I dedicated 8 years to Cortex Solutions. I began as an entry-level sales coordinator, fresh out of college with a marketing degree and student loans that kept me up at night. Back then, I was just grateful for the opportunity. Working 60-hour weeks, learning everything I could about our enterprise software solutions. By year 2, I moved into an account manager role, exceeding my targets by 23%. By year 4, I was promoted to senior account executive, specializing in financial sector clients. For the past 3 years, I consistently outperformed my quota by 35% or more. My performance reviews were stellar, and I had the highest client retention rate in the company. At Cortex, our commission structure was straightforward but substantial. 9% on enterprise deals, paid out 30 days after contract signing. This is standard in the tech industry, where margins are healthy and good salespeople are worth their weight in gold. But the industry is also cutthroat. Sales managers are under constant pressure to maximize profits, and some use tactics that would make your skin crawl. One common practice is territory reorganization right before big commissions pay out. Another is mysteriously moving potential clients to different account executives after all the groundwork has been laid. I'd seen it happen to others but naively thought my performance protected me from such manipulation. "You should watch your back with Edward," Teresa Hammond warned me 3 months ago over lunch. Teresa had been at Cortex for 12 years and saw the political landscape more clearly than most. "He's been asking a lot of questions about your client relationships, especially Westfield." Edward Grant was my boss, the regional sales director who joined the company 18 months ago. He came from a competitor with a reputation for aggressive tactics and had been watching me like a hawk since day one. I dismissed Teresa's concerns, focused instead on finalizing the biggest deal of my career. Westfield Financial Group was a $2 million enterprise software implementation that would transform their entire operation. I first cold-called their CFO, Jeffrey Parker, 8 months ago after reading about their digital transformation initiative in a finance journal. The first call lasted 12 minutes. The second meeting stretched to an hour. Over the next 7 months, I conducted 12 meetings with their team, created 4 custom product demonstrations, fought internally for specific customizations they needed, and built consensus among 7 different stakeholders at Westfield. I answered late-night emails, created custom ROI models, and even helped Jeffrey make the case to his board of directors. When the contract was finally signed, Jeffrey shook my hand firmly. "Alexandra, you've been remarkable throughout this process. I'm looking forward to working with you during implementation." That commission meant everything to me. $70,000 would go toward paying off my remaining student loans. Another $60,000 for a down payment on a home in a better school district for my 10-year-old daughter, Lily. The rest would help my sister launch her small business and beef up my emergency fund. As a single mother, financial security isn't just a nice-to-have. It's everything. I've been renting the same 2-bedroom apartment for 6 years, putting off home ownership to prioritize Lily's education and my debt. This commission was going to change everything. When the calendar invitation appeared in my inbox that Friday afternoon, my stomach dropped. Meeting with Edward Grant and HR, 3 p.m., conference room B. No agenda, no explanation, just that ominous combination of my boss and human resources. I spent 30 minutes preparing myself, reviewing recent performance metrics and deals in progress. Whatever concerns they had, I was ready to address them. Professionally, I had no idea I was walking into an ambush. Conference room B always felt unnecessarily cold. The glass-walled fishbowl at the end of the executive hallway had the perfect view of the sales floor, allowing management to observe the worker bees while making decisions about our futures. As I walked in, Edward was already seated at the head of the table, a folder neatly placed in front of him. Miranda Wells from HR sat to his right, eyes fixed on her notepad. "Alexandra, thank you for joining us," Edward began, his voice carrying a practiced sympathy that didn't reach his eyes. "Please have a seat." Miranda still wouldn't make eye contact. Bad sign. "I'll get right to the point," Edward continued, folding his hands on the table. "Cortex is implementing a strategic reorganization of our sales territories, effective immediately. Unfortunately, your position is being eliminated as part of this restructuring." The words hung in the air between us. "My position eliminated? 2 weeks before my commission. We're consolidating the Northeast financial sector with the Mid-Atlantic region," he explained, sliding a document toward me. "The company is moving in a new direction that requires a more streamlined approach to enterprise accounts." "I see," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "And the Westfield Financial Group account I just closed? That $2 million deal last week?" Edward exchanged a quick glance with Miranda. "All your accounts will be transitioned appropriately.
Any
Commissions will be reviewed per policy, of course." "Per policy?" I repeated. "Yes," Miranda finally spoke. "Your separation agreement outlines that pending commissions are subject to review based on deal closure status and transition requirements." Edward leaned forward. "I'll personally handle the Westfield transition. They're in good hands."
"Sure
they are," I thought. "Your hands." Externally, I maintained complete composure. Internally, everything was crumbling. My chest tightened as if concrete was setting around my ribs. My mind raced through calculations, rent due in 10 days, Lily's tuition payments scheduled for the 1st, my sister's business loan application waiting for my contribution. Suddenly, all the strange behaviors of the past month made sense. Edward asking for introductions to my key contacts at Westfield, the request for full documentation of all client communications, his unusual attendance at my final presentation. He hadn't been supporting me, he'd been positioning himself. "We'll need your company laptop, badge, and phone," Miranda said, sliding a box across the table. "Your personal items can be collected now with escort." I nodded, methodically removing my badge and placing my phone and laptop in the box. "Is there anything else?" "Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks severance," Miranda said. "We'll need you to sign these documents acknowledging receipt of company property and the separation agreement." I read each page carefully, despite Edward's impatience shifting. Nothing in the documents specifically addressed the Westfield Commission. I signed where indicated, maintaining my professional demeanor. "Thank you for the opportunity," I said, standing. "I wish you both the best." The walk to my desk felt like a walk of shame. Colleagues glanced up, then quickly away, the news having somehow already spread. I collected my family photos, my coffee mug, and the congratulations card the team had signed just last week after the Westfield deal closed. A security guard waited discreetly by the elevator. As I walked toward the parking garage, a familiar voice called from behind. "Alexandra, wait." Teresa rushed toward me, looking over her shoulder nervously. "I'm so sorry, this is completely wrong." "You tried to warn me," I said, the reality still sinking in. "He's been planning this for at least a month," she whispered.
He hired Marcus Johnson from his old company 2 weeks ago.
"They've been training him in the Chicago office to take over your accounts." The betrayal cut deeper. "Why? My numbers are the best in the region." "That's exactly why." "Your commission on Westfield would have been more than his quarterly bonus, plus he gets to look like a hero for landing a whale." She glanced toward the building. "Check your contract language about secured deals. There's protection there."
And
"Alexandra, Jeffrey Parker has called twice already asking for you." The drive home was a blur of emotions. Shock gave way to denial, then settled into a simmering anger that threatened to boil over. I took the long route, using the extra 20 minutes to compose myself before calling Lily's babysitter to say I'd be home early. "Everything okay, Miss Wilson?" Mrs. Chun asked. "Just finished up early today," I lied, not ready to share the news. with anyone in my family, not until I had a plan. When I walked through the door, Lily launched herself into my arms, chattering excitedly about her science project. I matched her enthusiasm, compartmentalizing my turmoil. After dinner, homework, and tucking her in with 2 bedtime stories instead of our usual one, I finally allowed myself to process what had happened. At my kitchen table, surrounded by the quiet of a sleeping household, I pulled out my personal laptop and opened the employment contract I'd signed years ago. Most employees never read the fine print, but my father had been a contract attorney, and his voice in my head had always pushed me to understand what I was signing. 3 cups of coffee and 5 hours later I found it, Section 12.4, Commissions. Unsecured deals shall be paid to the primary account representative who facilitated the signed agreement, regardless of employment status at time of payout, provided the deal remains valid. I leaned back in my chair, the first glimmer of hope warming my chest. The contract was clear. The deal was secured. The commission was mine. But I knew from experience that corporations don't simply honor their obligations because they should. I needed leverage, evidence, and a strategy. As the first light of Saturday morning filtered through my kitchen window, determination replaced despair. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Saturday morning began with purpose. While Lily watched cartoons with her bowl of cereal, I created a detailed timeline of the Westfield deal on my personal laptop. Every meeting, email, and phone call was meticulously documented with dates and outcomes. 8 months of work condensed into irrefutable evidence of my contribution. Fortunately, I'd always forwarded important emails to my personal account for backup. Corporate policy frowned upon this practice, but like many salespeople, I considered it insurance. Now, that insurance was paying off. I had documentation of Jeffrey's initial skepticism, his gradual buy-in, and the final celebratory exchanges when the contract was signed. By 9 o'clock, I had compiled a comprehensive list of all my contacts at Westfield, including detailed notes on my relationship with each person. Jeffrey Parker, the CFO, was my primary ally, but I'd also built strong connections with their CTO, implementation manager, and several department heads. Each represented a potential voice in my corner. With Lily occupied by her weekend playdate at a friend's house, I made my first strategic call to Rachel Cooper, my former mentor who now headed sales for a different division of Cortex. He did what? Rachel's outrage vibrated through the phone. Alexandra, that's blatant commission theft. I know, I said, grateful for the validation. But knowing it and proving it are different things. You need to move quickly, she advised. Edward will be contacting all your clients this weekend, spinning the story his way, and you need legal advice. Commission structures can get complicated. Do you know anyone? Sarah Daniels at Parker Legal. She specializes in employment cases, particularly in tech. I'll text you her number. And Alexandra, document everything, every conversation, every email. Build your case meticulously. By noon, I was sitting in Sarah Daniels' office, contract in hand. She was a no-nonsense attorney with 15 years of experience fighting for employees against corporate malfeasance. Your contract language is unusually specific about secured deals, she noted, reviewing the document. Most companies leave more wiggle room. The clause was added 3 years ago after a similar situation. The salesperson sued and won, so they updated the contract. That works in your favor, Sarah said, making notes. The next step is establishing that you were the primary account representative who secured the deal. Do you have documentation? I opened my laptop and showed her the timeline, emails, and meeting notes I'd compiled. This is excellent, she nodded approvingly. Most clients come in with far less. Now, let's discuss strategy. Cortex will likely claim the territory reorganization was planned before the deal closed, making her boss the new primary account representative. But that's not true. Truth and probability are different things in legal matters, Sarah explained. We need witnesses who can verify your role, and we need to understand what communication has happened since your termination. As I drove home, I reflected on my relationship with Jeffrey Parker. Our connection had begun professionally but developed into genuine respect. We discovered our shared military backgrounds during our third meeting, his Army, mine Air Force, both of us. First-generation college graduates who worked our way up. During the final contract signing, Jeffrey had pulled me aside. "Alexandra, I'm counting on you for this implementation. My reputation is on the line with the board." His firm handshake had sealed more than just a business transaction. It was a personal commitment between professionals. Throughout the afternoon, I carefully reached out to trusted industry contacts, former colleagues who'd left Cortex, friends at competing firms. Each conversation revealed more pieces of the puzzle. Edward did the same thing at SICK, former colleague Martin Reeves told me. 2 different salespeople lost major commissions right before payout. It's his pattern. By evening, I'd spoken with 3 other salespeople who had experienced similar situations. 1 had fought and received a partial settlement. 2 had given up, warning me about the emotional toll of challenging a corporation. At my kitchen table, I calculated my financial runway. Without the commission, my savings would cover expenses for 3 months, maybe 4 if I cut everything to the bone. The thought of telling Lily we couldn't move to a better school district made my chest ache. I organized my evidence chronologically, creating a compelling narrative of the Westfield deal from first contact to signed contract. Every presentation I'd created, every objection I'd overcome, every relationship I'd built. The story was clear and undeniable. This was my deal from inception to completion. As Sunday evening approached, I faced the most crucial decision: who to call first. I had several options, each with different implications. I could contact HR directly and demand my commission. I could have Sarah send a legal letter initiating proceedings. I could reach out to Vincent Matthews, the CEO of Cortex. But one call stood out as the most strategic first move, a call that could change everything with a single conversation. A call to Jeffrey Parker at Westfield Financial Group. The potential consequences weighed heavily. If I involved a client in an internal dispute, I risked burning bridges. If Jeffrey sided with Cortex, I could lose my strongest piece of leverage. But if he stood by our relationship and the commitments we'd made to each other, it could tip the scales decisively in my favor. I reviewed my notes one final time, straightened my home office, and took 3 deep breaths to center myself. Then, with steady hands and a clear purpose, I reached for my phone to make the call that would set everything in motion. My home office felt unusually quiet that Sunday evening. Lily was asleep, the neighborhood still, as if the world was holding its breath with me. I'd spent 30 minutes preparing, reviewing my talking points, and practicing a tone that would convey concern rather than desperation. The call needed to achieve multiple objectives: inform Jeffrey of my departure, gauge his reaction to the transition, remind him of our specific agreements, and understand his plans without seeming manipulative, a delicate balance of transparency and strategy. I dialed his direct number, which few people had. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Jeffrey Parker." "Jeffrey, it's Alexandra Wilson." I apologized for calling on a Sunday evening. "Alexandra." His surprise was evident. "No apology necessary. To what do I owe the pleasure?" "Getting ready for our kickoff next week." The question confirmed my suspicion. He hadn't been informed of my departure. "Actually, Jeffrey, that's why I'm calling. I wanted to let you know personally that Friday was my last day at Cortex. My position was eliminated in a territory reorganization." Silence hung between us for several seconds. "That's unexpected," he finally said, his tone shifting from friendly to concerned. "Edward Grant called me yesterday saying he'd be personally overseeing our implementation. He didn't mention you were leaving. He implied he'd been involved all along." "I see." I kept my voice neutral despite the confirmation of Edward's deception. What else did Edward share about the implementation plans? "He suggested some changes to our timeline and certain customizations, said they might be more efficient approaches." Jeffrey's frustration became more apparent. "Alexandra, we signed this contract based on specific commitments you made. The board approved $2 million because of the implementation plan you outlined. I understand your concern. Those customizations we discussed were critical to integrating with your legacy systems." I paused, choosing my next words carefully. Jeffrey, may I ask what's scheduled for tomorrow regarding the implementation? Edward set up a meeting at 10 to review the transition plan. He's bringing someone named Marcus, who he says will be handling our day-to-day. Jeffrey's voice lowered. Alexandra, what's really going on here? We've worked together for 8 months, and I've always appreciated your straightforwardness. This was the moment of truth. How much to reveal without seeming unprofessional? Jeffrey, I believe my termination was timed to avoid paying the commission on our deal, which would have been due in 2 weeks. The contract language protects my right to that commission. But I'm concerned that the implementation promises I made to you might not be honored in the same way. Another pause, longer this time. That's troubling on multiple levels, Jeffrey finally responded. Not just for you, but for Westfield. We chose Cortex largely because of your understanding of our needs and your commitment to seeing them fulfilled. My priority is ensuring you receive what was promised, I said sincerely. I invested 8 months in understanding your requirements and designing a solution that would transform your operations. And my priority is a successful implementation as promised, Jeffrey stated firmly. $2 million isn't something my board takes lightly. If the terms are changing, that's a material concern. The conversation had reached its critical juncture. We both recognized our interests were aligned, even if our specific goals differed. Alexandra, have you spoken with Vincent Matthews about this? Jeffrey asked, referring to Cortex's CEO. Not yet. I was terminated on Friday afternoon. Vincent and I serve on the Technology Innovation Board together, Jeffrey revealed. We're not close friends, but we have a professional relationship. He's always struck me as someone who values integrity. I doubt he's aware of these circumstances. That would be my assessment as well, I agreed, hope building. Here's what I propose, Jeffrey continued. I'll call Vincent directly tomorrow morning before my meeting with Edward. I'll express my concerns about the transition and specifically mention the commitments you made that factored into our decision. I won't make it about your commission directly, but about our confidence in the implementation. That would be incredibly helpful, I said, relief washing over me. What can I provide to support that conversation? Send me a bullet point summary of the specific customizations and timeline commitments we agreed upon. Nothing lengthy, just the key points I should emphasize. We spent the next 20 minutes aligning on specific talking points. Jeffrey agreed to text me after his call with Vincent, giving me time to prepare for any follow-up. After ending the call with Jeffrey, I made one more strategic outreach. Samantha Wright was the CEO of Innovate Tech, Cortex's most formidable competitor. We'd met at industry conferences and had mutual respect, though we'd never discussed employment possibilities. Alexandra, this is a pleasant surprise. Samantha answered, her voice warm despite the late hour. Samantha, I hope I'm not interrupting your evening. I wanted to touch base about a professional matter. Not at all. What can I help with? I explained my situation concisely, emphasizing my sales record and client relationships rather than dwelling on the termination details. That's Cortex's loss and potentially our gain, Samantha responded. I've seen your numbers at industry roundtables' impressive consistency. Would you be open to meeting tomorrow afternoon? Say, 3 o'clock? That would be perfect, I agreed, surprised by the immediacy of her interest. Excellent. I'll have my assistant send the details. And Alexandra, bring your client list. We should discuss transition possibilities. With both calls complete, I turned my attention to final preparations for Monday. I emailed Sarah Daniels with updates on both conversations, organized materials for potential meetings, and finally allowed myself to consider the possibility that this might work out in my favor. As I prepared for bed, a strange calm settled over me. I'd done everything possible to position myself strategically. Now, events would unfold based on relationships I'd built and value I'd created. Whatever happened next, I would face it with the same professionalism and determination that had defined my career. Monday morning arrived with the first tangible sign that the tide might be turning. At 8:42 a.m., my phone chimed with a text from Jeffrey. Just spoke with Vincent. He was concerned and investigating, mentioned he'd be reaching out to you. Edward was also on the call and seemed blindsided by CEO involvement. Meeting still proceeding. At 10, but tone has shifted. We'll update after. This was precisely the escalation I'd hoped for. Vincent Matthews had a reputation for being demanding but fair. More importantly, he was known for protecting Cortex's client relationships above all else. At 1:30 p.m., I arrived at Innovate Tech's headquarters for my meeting with Samantha. The modern glass building projected the innovation their name promised. Unlike Cortex's traditional corporate environment, Innovate Tech's office featured open, collaborative spaces, vibrant colors, and a tangible energy. Alexandra, welcome. Samantha greeted me personally in the lobby, forgoing the typical executive distance. Let's talk in my office. As we walked through the workspace, I noted how team members interacted. The culture seemed collaborative rather than competitive, with multiple small groups engaged in animated discussions around project boards. You're observing our culture, Samantha noted as we entered her corner office. We believe sales isn't about individual heroics but supported excellence. Even our top performers have team resources. The next hour was the most refreshing professional conversation I'd had in years. Rather than the typical interview focus on numbers and closing techniques, Samantha was interested in my philosophy of client relationships and long-term value creation. Tell me about Westfield, she prompted. Not the deal size, but why they chose Cortex. They chose a relationship built on trust and a deep understanding of their needs, I answered honestly. The technology was secondary to their confidence that I would guide them through a successful implementation. Samantha nodded approvingly. That's exactly what we look for. Technology is commoditizing. Trust never will. By the meeting's end, she presented an offer that exceeded my expectations. A base salary 15% higher than Cortex, a commission structure with stronger protection language, and the opportunity to build my own team focusing on financial sector clients. We'll also provide client transition support if you can bring Westfield with you, she added. Our legal team has reviewed the situation, and their non-compete doesn't prevent client choice in this circumstance, especially given their breach of your commission agreement. I was contemplating the offer when my phone rang. Vincent Matthews' name appeared on the screen. I should take this, I explained to Samantha. Of course, she said. Use the conference room next door for privacy. Take your time. As I settled into the empty conference room, Alexandra, Vincent Matthews here. Thank you for taking my call. Of course, Mr. Matthews. What can I do for you? First, I want to apologize for reaching you so late in this situation. Some concerning information has come to my attention regarding your departure and the Westfield Financial Group relationship. His tone was measured but clearly troubled. I'd appreciate the opportunity to meet with you in person to understand your perspective. Would you be available to come to my office today? I could be available at 4, I replied, calculating the time I'd need to prepare with Sarah. 4 o'clock works perfectly. I'll have security expect you. And Alexandra, I want to assure you this is being taken seriously at the highest level. Immediately after the call, I contacted Sarah Daniels, who agreed to meet me at a coffee shop near Cortex headquarters to review strategy before the meeting. This is a positive development, Sarah advised as we sat in a quiet corner of the cafe. The CEO's direct involvement suggests your call to Jeffrey was effective. Let's focus on 3 objectives. Establishing your clear ownership of the Westfield relationship, documenting the termination timing relative to commission payout, and positioning reasonable requests for resolution. What's reasonable in this situation? I asked. Full commission payment is the baseline. They may offer reinstatement, which you should consider carefully given Innovate Tech's offer. Either way, we should also request compensation for the emotional distress and professional disruption. As we finalized our approach, I weighed the relative merits of both options. Cortex offered familiarity and established relationships, but Edward's actions had revealed a toxic element in the culture. Innovate Tech presented a fresh start with apparently better values, but any new environment carried uncertainties. At precisely 4 o'clock, I entered Cortex headquarters for the first time since my termination. The security guard did a double take before checking his list. Miss Wilson, you're cleared to go up to the executive floor. Mr. Matthews is expecting you. As I walked through the open office area toward the elevators, former colleagues stared in surprise. Teresa caught my eye from her desk and gave me a subtle thumbs up. The whispered conversations in my wake confirmed that my return was causing a stir. The executive suite receptionist escorted me directly to the boardroom where Vincent Matthews waited, along with Edward Grant and a woman I recognized as Diane Crawford, Cortex's chief legal officer. My pulse quickened at the level of seniority present, but I kept my expression neutral as I took my seat. "Miss Wilson, thank you for coming," Vincent began formally. "I believe you know Edward, and this is Diane Crawford, our CLO." I nodded acknowledgement to both, noting Edward's unusually tense posture. "I've asked for this meeting to address concerns raised about your termination and its timing relative to the Westfield Financial Group implementation," Vincent continued. "I'd like to hear your perspective on the situation." As I opened my portfolio containing my documentation, I felt a calm confidence replace my earlier anxiety. I had truth, evidence, and leverage on my side. It was time to present my case. "Before I begin," I said, connecting my laptop to the boardroom display, "I want to clarify that my goal today is resolution, not confrontation. I've dedicated 8 years to Cortex's success, and I believe in the company's products and potential." Vincent nodded appreciatively, while Edward shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Let me walk you through the Westfield Financial Group relationship from inception to contract signing," I continued, displaying my timeline on the screen. 8 months ago, I identified Westfield as a potential client based on their digital transformation initiative. My first call to Jeffrey Parker lasted 12 minutes. Methodically, I walked through each significant milestone, the initial skepticism I'd overcome, the 12 detailed meetings, the 4 custom product demonstrations, the technical challenges we'd solved together, all documented with emails, calendar invitations, and meeting notes. As you can see, I highlighted a particular email. Jeffrey Parker explicitly states that the customization for their legacy system integration was the deciding factor in choosing Cortex over competitors. This customization was one I personally championed internally against some resistance. Edward leaned forward, interrupting. "No one is questioning that you were involved in the initial prospecting, Alexandra. But this was a team effort with significant oversight and direction from regional leadership." "That's an interesting characterization," I replied evenly, clicking to my next exhibit. Here's the complete email thread regarding the legacy system integration. You'll notice Edward isn't included until the final approval, which I requested. After securing technical team commitment. Vincent's expression remained neutral, but his eyes narrowed slightly as he reviewed the evidence. Furthermore, I continued, the contract negotiations were handled exclusively between myself and Westfield's team, as documented in these meeting notes. The territory reorganization was never mentioned during my tenure until the termination meeting itself. Edward's counterclaims grew increasingly desperate as the presentation progressed. He suggested my performance in other areas had been declining. He claimed the reorganization had been planned for months. He even insinuated I had neglected smaller accounts to focus on Westfield. Each claim I methodically disproved with documentation. My overall performance metrics. The conspicuous absence of reorganization in any department communications. The growth statistics for my smaller accounts during the same period. Ms. Wilson has certainly presented compelling evidence of her role in the Westfield acquisition, Diane Crawford noted, her legal assessment cutting through Edward's increasingly agitated objections. Vincent, who had been mostly observing, finally spoke. "There's another factor we need to address. Jeffrey Parker called me this morning with significant concerns about the implementation plans presented to him today." He turned to Edward. He indicated that changes were proposed, customizations that were central to their decision to sign with us. More concerning, he stated that our $2 million contract is now contingent on Ms. Wilson's involvement in some capacity during implementation. The boardroom fell silent. The financial and reputational implications of potentially losing a $2 million contract hung heavily in the air. Edward's face flushed. "That's completely inappropriate. She's obviously engineered this client reaction to leverage her position." "That's a serious accusation," Vincent replied coolly. Are you suggesting Jeffrey Parker, CFO of a billion-dollar financial institution, would jeopardize a major technology implementation as a personal favor? No, but there's clearly been some behind-the-scenes communication that's inappropriate for a terminated employee. I contacted Jeffrey yesterday, I acknowledged openly, after learning that he hadn't been informed of my departure and was being told you had been involved in the deal all along. Given our 8-month relationship, built on trust and specific commitments, I felt he deserved direct communication from me. Edward's desperation became increasingly evident. This is clearly a case of miscommunication. The reorganization timing was unfortunate relative to the commission schedule. But that wasn't the driving factor in the decision. Then what was? Vincent asked directly. Strategic alignment, territory efficiency, consolidation of financial sector expertise. Edward's answers became vague corporate speak, lacking the specificity of my documented timeline. Diane Crawford cleared her throat. From a legal perspective, I should note that Ms. Wilson's employment contract contains unusually specific language regarding commissions on secured deals. Section 12.4 states clearly that commissions are due to the primary account representative regardless of employment status at time of payout. She turned to Edward. Given the documentation presented, there seems little question about who secured this deal. Furthermore, our precedent in similar situations has been to honor commission agreements to avoid potential litigation and reputational damage. Vincent's expression hardened as he absorbed the full picture. Edward, would you please excuse us? I'd like to speak with Ms. Wilson and Diane privately. The request wasn't really a question. Edward gathered his materials and left the room, the door closing firmly behind him. Vincent's demeanor changed immediately. Alexandra, first let me personally apologize for this situation. It reflects a serious lapse in management oversight that I take full responsibility for. Thank you. Mr. Matthews, Vincent, please. I've reviewed your sales record while waiting for this meeting. 5 consecutive quarters as top performer, highest client retention rate, multiple company awards. Frankly, you're exactly the kind of sales executive we can't afford to lose.
He leaned back in his chair.
So now the question becomes what? Would an appropriate resolution look like from your perspective? The moment had arrived. I was now negotiating from a position of considerable strength, with both legal and client leverage on my side. It was time to present my terms. My primary concern is the commission payment, I began, maintaining professional composure despite the surge of validation I felt. The $180,000 commission on the Westfield deal represents 8 months of dedicated work and is contractually protected. Vincent nodded. That's completely reasonable. What else? I hadn't expected such immediate agreement and momentarily recalibrated my approach. I believe there should be formal acknowledgement of my role in securing the Westfield relationship, both internally and with the client. Agreed, Vincent said without hesitation. Anything else? This opening exceeded my most optimistic scenarios. I decided to address the systemic issue. I'm concerned that what happened to me may reflect broader issues in sales management practices. I know of at least 3 other salespeople who experienced similar situations under Edward's leadership at previous companies. Vincent's eyebrows raised slightly. That's very concerning. Do you have specific recommendations? An investigation into territory reorganization practices would be appropriate, along with clearer protections for all sales representatives regarding commission structures. Diane made notes as Vincent considered my requests. These all seem reasonable. Now, let me present a counteroffer for your consideration. He leaned forward. Full commission payment, processed immediately. Reinstatement with promotion to Senior Director of Financial Services, reporting directly to our new VP of Sales starting next month. A personal apology to you and acknowledgement of your role with Westfield. And $20,000 as compensation for the emotional distress this situation has caused. The offer was generous and addressed most of my concerns. But the meeting with Samantha had opened my eyes to possibilities beyond Cortex. I appreciate the offer, I replied carefully. May I ask about the reporting structure in the interim month? You'd report directly to me while we transition sales leadership, Vincent confirmed. And Edward's role going forward? Vincent and Diane exchanged glances. That's being determined as part of a broader review, Vincent said diplomatically. I weighed my options carefully. Returning to Cortex would mean convenient continuity and a significant promotion, but it would also mean returning to an environment where such a betrayal had been possible in the first place. Innovate Tech offered a fresh start with apparently better values, but any new environment carried uncertainties. I'd like to propose a slightly different arrangement, I suggested. Full commission payment and the acknowledgement of my role are non-negotiable. But rather than reinstatement, I would propose serving as a consultant for 30 days to ensure a smooth Westfield implementation, compensated at an appropriate consulting rate. You're considering other opportunities, Vincent surmised.
Yes.
This situation has prompted me to explore options I might not have otherwise considered. Vincent nodded thoughtfully. I can't say I'm not disappointed, but I understand. What consulting rate would you consider appropriate? We negotiated specifics for the next 30 minutes, ultimately agreeing to terms that satisfied all parties. Full commission payment to be processed within 48 hours. A consulting arrangement at $300 per hour for 30 days to support the Westfield implementation. A public acknowledgement of my role in securing the relationship, no enforcement of non-compete clauses, and a $25,000 settlement for emotional distress. With terms agreed upon, I contacted Jeffrey to arrange a meeting regarding Westfield's future. We met for coffee late that afternoon, where I explained my new consulting role during the transition. I'm relieved Cortex handled this appropriately, Jeffrey said, though I'm not surprised given Vincent's direct involvement. What happens after the 30-day transition? I'm exploring new opportunities, I said, then shared details about Innovate Tech's approach and philosophy. I've heard good things about their platform, Jeffrey acknowledged. Slightly different focus than Cortex, but potentially a better fit for our next phase projects. Would you be our point person there as well? Potentially, if I decide to accept their offer. Alexandra, at the risk of being too direct, Westfield values relationships with people we trust more than specific platforms. Your guidance through this process has been invaluable. If you land somewhere that can meet our needs, we'd certainly be interested in continuing our professional relationship. His words crystallized what I already suspected, the value I'd created. Wasn't just in understanding Westfield's technical requirements, but in building genuine trust that transcended any particular employer. Later that evening, I received a call from Teresa with news about Edward. He's been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The entire sales floor is buzzing. Apparently, 3 other account executives have come forward with similar experiences. That was fast, I remarked, surprised by the immediate action. Vincent called an emergency meeting with all sales directors after he left. Word is he's furious about the potential client impact and possible pattern of behavior. The industry ripples extended beyond Cortex. By Wednesday, I'd received calls from 2 other technology firms inquiring about my availability, having heard through the grapevine about my situation and resolution. With all options before me, I made my final decision Thursday morning. The call to Samantha was brief but decisive. I'd like to accept your offer, I told her, with one additional request. I'd like to bring Teresa Hammond from Cortex to join my team. She's an exceptional talent who's been overlooked for promotion repeatedly. Done, Samantha agreed without hesitation. We're thrilled to have you both. When can you start? I'll complete my consulting obligation to Cortex for Westfields implementation 30 days from now. With my decision made, I sent a professional email to Vincent, confirming my consulting arrangement and declining the reinstatement offer. His response was gracious, expressing understanding and leaving the door open for future possibilities. As I closed my laptop that evening, I felt a profound sense of closure mixed with new beginning. What had started as a devastating betrayal had transformed into an unexpected opportunity. The path forward wasn't what I'd planned, but it now held possibilities I might never have discovered otherwise. 6 months later, my corner office at Innovate Tech offered a view of the city skyline that matched my expanded perspective. The transition had been smoother than I anticipated, with Samantha providing resources to build my financial services team properly from the ground up. The Westfield account had not only successfully transitioned, but expanded to a $3.2 million. Implementation, incorporating additional services we'd identified during our needs assessment. Jeffrey Parker had become a valued advocate, referring 3 other financial institutions to innovate tech based on our successful partnership. "The conference room is ready for your team meeting," announced Teresa, who had joined me at Innovate Tech 3 months ago and already proven herself invaluable as my operations director. "Thanks, Teresa. Are the quarterly numbers finalized?" "Yes, and they're impressive. Your team is 28% above target, the highest in the company." We walked together toward the conference room, passing collaborative spaces where team members engaged in animated discussion about client solutions. The culture difference between Cortex and Innovate Tech remained one of the most refreshing aspects of the change. Competition existed, but it was channeled toward client outcomes rather than internal politics. "I never properly thanked you," I told Teresa as we paused outside the conference room. "Your warning about Edward and your support afterward made all the difference. I should be thanking you," Teresa replied. 8 years at Cortex with minimal advancement despite consistently exceeding my targets. 3 months here and I've already had more growth opportunities than my entire previous career. The incident that brought us here had transformed from a professional catastrophe into a catalyst for positive change. My financial situation had improved dramatically. The commission payment and settlement from Cortex had cleared my student loans completely. My new compensation package at Innovate Tech had allowed me to purchase a home in the school district I'd been targeting for Lily, who was thriving in her new environment. The investment in my sister's business had yielded unexpected dividends. As well, her artisanal bakery had secured a contract with a regional grocery chain, expanding from 1 location to 3 in just 6 months. Most significantly, my professional reputation had grown beyond what I could have anticipated. An industry publication had featured my story, with names changed. As an example of maintaining professionalism during difficult transitions, I'd been invited to speak at a sales conference about building genuine client relationships that transcend specific employers. The LinkedIn article I'd written about ethical sales practices and client-centered relationship building had gone viral within the industry, garnering thousands of shares and hundreds of comments from sales professionals with similar experiences. My lunch with Teresa extended beyond our team meeting preparation into a deeper reflection on our journey. "Do you ever regret how things unfolded?" Teresa asked. "It was a brutal experience." I considered the question carefully. I regret the stress and uncertainty, especially how it affected Lily during those tense weeks. But the outcome? No. This challenge forced me to recognize my true value and advocate for myself in ways I might have avoided otherwise. The confidence to stand up for yourself, Teresa nodded. And the willingness to take calculated risks, I added. I could have accepted Vincent's reinstatement offer, returned to the familiar environment with a promotion, and moved on. The safer choice. Instead, you jumped into completely new territory. With a clearer understanding of my professional value and the importance of culture fit, I smiled. Plus, I learned to read employment contracts very carefully. Later that afternoon, I met with Jeffrey Parker for a monthly review of Westfield's implementation progress. Our professional relationship had evolved into a friendship built on mutual respect and shared values. The board is extremely pleased with the results, Jeffrey reported. The efficiency gains have exceeded our projections by 17%. The CFO of First Capital Trust called me yesterday asking for details after seeing our quarterly results. Another referral, I laughed. You're becoming our unofficial sales ambassador, just sharing positive experiences, he replied. You know, I've been meaning to tell you something. The day I called Vincent about your situation, he asked why I was involving myself in their personnel matters. I told him that in 20 years of financial leadership, I'd learned that how a company treats its people directly predicts how they'll treat their clients. His words crystallized the most important lesson from the entire experience. Success isn't just about individual achievement or even client acquisition. It comes from integrity maintained, even when it's difficult, from relationships built on genuine value, and from the courage to stand up for what's right. As I look back on that fateful Friday when Edward called me into the conference room, I no longer feel the sting of betrayal. Instead, I recognize it as the moment that ultimately propelled me toward greater success and fulfillment than I might otherwise have achieved. The commission that once seemed like my ultimate goal now represents just one milestone in a journey that continues to unfold with new possibilities. By standing up for myself professionally while maintaining composure and integrity, I discovered strengths I hadn't fully recognized and opportunities I might never have pursued. What's your experience with workplace challenges? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself professionally, and how did it change your path? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more real-life professional experiences and lessons learned. Remember that sometimes our biggest setbacks can become our greatest opportunities for growth when we approach them with integrity and determination. Thank you for watching, and I wish you strength and wisdom in your own professional journey.